What's up, guys? Curious about traveling or moving to Colombia? Well, these are 10 things that really surprised me the first time that I went. So I'm going to share them with you in this video. They're in no particular order. It's just my thoughts of Colombia. First thing that really surprised me is the quality of the food in Colombia. You could find fresh fruit, fresh vegetables, and fresh meat all over the place for a very decent price, especially coming from the States. Well, in Colombia, you could taste the difference. Even when you're making something as simple as chicken breast. I noticed the difference in the quality of the meat. Actually, coming back to the States a couple of times, it shocked me just how big the chicken breasts are here. I never thought about it beforehand until I came back from Colombia and I got so used to buying chicken every day there. The actual chicken breasts were thinner, they were smaller, and they just had more flavor in Colombia without having to do anything to them. Something as simple as an apple, you could really feel the difference because in the States there's like a foam coat on the outside of the apple, whereas in Colombia and actually most of Latin America, you don't have that same texture. So that's my biggest thoughts on the food, is that the quality of food is way better in Colombia than it is in the States. Now, if you're going out to eat at restaurants, that's where it gets a little different. The quality of food in the States is, in my opinion, a lot better. So the average restaurant, compared to the average restaurant in Colombia, it lacks a lot of seasoning and spice and just flavor, to be honest. No, I've been in Colombia for so long, I got used to the food, and I actually really like it when I'm there. I crave it. It's simple, you know. It's nothing crazy. Like if you get menu of the day, it's going to be chicken, rice, beans, salad, and maybe a soup and a juice. But it's all organic, it's all fresh, and the portion sizes are a lot smaller. So you can really taste the difference. You feel different. Just overall, how you feel after you eat in Colombia compared to when you eat in the States, I notice a big difference. The second one is noise. Yeah, the first time I think you go to Latin America in general, but for me specifically, Colombia, there is noise all over the place there. All right, doesn't matter if you're in your apartment, in your house, you could be in the middle of anywhere in Colombia, and you're going to hear noise, whether that's coming from the cars outside, from music, one house, two houses down, or even your own house, because people will blast music there in Colombia at all hours of the day and night, and they don't really think twice about it. It's just part of the culture. When you first go to Colombia, you're going to want to find some quieter neighborhoods if you're not used to that, because there was times at night where I couldn't sleep, either because of just the amount of traffic going by, or how loud the music is. If you're not prepared for it, it could really stress you out, especially when it comes to your sleep. So keep that in mind, guys. And also there's just street vendors that go up and down the streets there selling fresh produce and vegetables usually. And they'll walk up and down the streets and they have their own little microphones, and they have pre-recorded messages on there saying, you know, buy 2 avocados and you get it for this price, whatever. But that is also something that it caught me off guard. And sometimes they'll come in the morning, like 8-9 a.m. and let's say you had a night out, or whatever's going on, you just want to sleep in. You're gonna hear the street vendors sometimes coming down the road, and it is not quiet. They make sure everybody knows that they're there. So keep that in mind, guys. Number 3 is the natural beauty. This one really caught me off guard. I just, for a specific example, I lived the majority of my time in Medellin, and that city is so connected to nature. There's so much greenery. It is so lush. The city's interconnected with nature, and it's really not like many places I've been to before. And I think most of Colombia is like that. Even if you go to the more rural, especially if you go to the more rural cities, you're gonna have mountains and farms and waterfalls and nature. You're gonna see beautiful tropical birds and animals that you've probably never seen before, and even you know, finding fresh fruit and vegetable trees growing just down the street from where you live in a major city like Medellin. It's super cool to see, and that's something that, you know, it brings a sense of peace when you're there living in it. Even though a place like Medellin is super chaotic, you could go to some parks where they're completely shaded and there's little waterfalls, and it feels like you're in a different world. Especially if you go up to the mountains of Medellin, up in Envigado or Las Palmas, or you go to Santa Elena or Parque Arvi, and you're really in a different world up there. You could see beautiful, untouched nature. That's just so green, so lush, so much water, and it's really beautiful, the nature, guys. So Yeah, I think that's one thing. It blew my mind just how beautiful it was and how in harmony they live with the nature there. All right, guys, the fourth one is going to be how easy it is to talk to and make friends there. Now, this is a case-by-case basis, of course. People are going to be people. But overall, I found when I was in Colombia that people are extremely friendly. It's easy to talk to whoever. You could go up and talk to whoever. And people are just overall really nice. And you could ask them simple questions like, oh, I'm lost, I need directions, and people will go out of their way to help you. That has been what I have found traveling back and forth for 4 years now. Obviously, case by case, right? Not everybody's going to be that warm and friendly, but the majority, the average person there, whether I was in Medellin, whether I was in Cali, whether I was on the coast, whether I was in San Andres Island, it didn't matter. The majority of people were just super warm, super friendly, super inviting. Now, I think Medellin specifically, because it is more of a major city, it's not, compared to the other places it wasn't as warm and friendly, but overall, if you take the average city in like me, I'm from the States, you take the average city in the States, let's say, a good-sized metropolitan city, people are not so warm, they're not so receptive to you. But a place like Medellin, I found it to be the case where most people are going to talk to you. Most people will engage in conversation. Actually, it got to the point to where sometimes my Spanish was limited, and there was times where I was lost, or there was times where I didn't know what else to say because they like to keep the conversation going, and I had nothing more to say, either because I had no more thoughts or because my Spanish was limited. Overall, I found it extremely easy to network, to talk to people, and to be really sociable in a place like Colombia, especially Medellin. For instance, even my Airbnb host have always gone out of their way to make me feel comfortable. They're usually there to greet me, whether I'm renting the whole place to myself or not. They go over the whole property, show me how everything works. And it's just nice, that people they're more sociable, they're more personable, I feel, in a place like Colombia. All right, guys, the next thing is going to be the cost of living, which I'm sure a lot of you already know. Colombia, if you're coming from a place like the States or Europe, it's going to be a lot cheaper. And that goes for rent prices, that goes for food prices, that goes for entertainment, that goes for pretty much anything. Unless you want to buy electronics, I would recommend to buy that in the States or Europe before you go, because usually electronics are going to be more expensive in Colombia. Other than that, the food, you're probably going to pay about half to a third to a quarter of the price of whatever you like to buy. Also, the cost of rent. If you get an Airbnb, even for a month, 2 months at a time, it's going to be about half, if not a quarter of the price as you'll be paying in the States, especially in the bigger cities. For instance, I rented an Airbnb in Seattle for a month for a bedroom in a house, and I was paying $1,300. And go to a place like Colombia, where even on the high end, I think I was paying $500 a month for a room in a house. And that's just renting private rooms, right? So if you want to rent an apartment, you can find them, for $500 to $1,000, depending on your price range in Colombia. And you're going to be in the best areas. You're going to be in Poblado, Lareles. You're going to be in Envigado or Sabaneta or even Berlin to some extent. But yeah, if you go to the States, in most major cities, you cannot find a one-bedroom apartment for under $2,000. So your money goes a lot farther out in Colombia. And also, the last thing I want to touch on is entertainment. If you want to go out to watch a movie, get popcorn, snacks, all that good stuff, you're probably going to pay $15 to $20 for you and one other person to go to the movies. And that's total. That's with the tickets, that's with the drinks, with the snacks, with everything, right? No, you're probably going to have to learn Spanish because most of the movies are in Spanish down there. Compare that to the States, some movie theaters in the States, it's $25 for a ticket just to get in, plus snacks, which they upsell like crazy, and drinks and all that good stuff. They upsell in Colombia too, but the price difference just, pesos don't stretch as far as the dollar. So whenever you bring your dollar down there, you get so much more bang for the buck down in Colombia compared to the States. All right, this was actually one of the things that really surprised me. It can get super annoying if you're not prepared for it, and even if you are prepared for it, it can still be super annoying. And that is going to be wait times at stores and restaurants. One of the major chains down there is Éxito, and they sell, it's like their version of Walmart. So whatever you want to find, you want clothes, you want groceries, you want a TV, they got it all there for you. There could be 3 people in line with, a little handheld shopping cart. On the States, that takes 5 minutes at most. I'm not kidding, guys. I've waited in line at Éxito with 2 to 3 people in front of me for 20 to 30 minutes sometimes. And it's not just Éxito, it's any store you go to pretty much. People in Colombia, their mentality is different. They take things slower, and that really shows at stores and even restaurants. I've been to really nice high-end restaurants, and in the States, if you go to somewhere like that, people are on top of it right away. How can I help you? The host is letting you know, okay, it's going to be a 30-minute wait. We'll get you seated right away. In Colombia, it's just not the same etiquette. It's a different culture. So sometimes the host won't even talk to you if there is a host. And if there's not a host, sometimes you just got to wait for a seat, or you go find a seat, and that doesn't guarantee, even if you're sitting down, that doesn't guarantee anything. Sometimes the host will actually sit you at dirty tables in Colombia too. I've had that happen several times, and people will just keep walking by like there's no problem, and you're like, hey, can I get this cleaned? And they'll just sort of look at you like, oh yeah. It's sort of like you're inconveniencing them to take care of you. And so that is a big difference between the States and Colombia. Is when you go to restaurants, first off, the wait time will probably take a while just to get seated and to get food, and then also the speed at which the server or host or food runner does something for you. It feels like you have to chase them down. Actually, you do have to chase them down. For me, coming from the States, that's extremely rude if you do that. Like if I were to do that in a restaurant here, I would just feel so rude about doing that. But in Colombia, that's the culture. So it's a big cultural difference. And also in restaurants, they don't always tip in Colombia, which again, coming from the States, is a big difference. And if they do tip, if they give really good service, then it's kind of expected 10% to tip. But that's not implied. In the States, it's almost obligatory for you to tip, even if the person gives bad service. In Colombia, it is not. So if they do a really good job, 10% is kind of the cultural standard. And if not, they don't see a reason to tip. Government inefficiency. So again, with long wait times in restaurants and stores, there's usually long wait times to get things done within the government. You ask 3 different people in the government how you need to proceed about something, and they'll give you 3 different answers, which is very confusing. So one example off the top of my head, me and my ex-girlfriend went to get her passport because she was going to travel with me to Mexico. And the guy there was like, oh, it's impossible to get your passport right now. You need to make an appointment, and the next appointment is going to be 1 to 2 months away, and you have to do it online. You can't do it here in person. So we're just like, what the heck? And then later on, like 5-10 minutes, that guy comes back around. He's like, well, you could do it that way, or you could give me, I forgot what it was now, maybe like $30-$40. And he's like, I'll make you an appointment for a couple days from now because I know people that work inside. And it was just some random guy, like I didn't know who this guy was. Apparently he worked there. And so after thinking about it for a while, we were just like, what the heck? This is crazy. What? Like, I don't know this guy. How can we trust him? There should be a system to it, not, oh, I know this guy. I'll pull this string, give me $40 and I'll make this happen for you, right? So we ended up trusting the guy because we kind of wanted to get the passport right away. Better to have it and not need it right away than to be waiting in the last week and going on the trip and you still don't have the passport. So we're just like, all right, $40, we'll give you the $40. And yeah, whatever this guy did, he ended up getting us an appointment the following couple of days. I don't remember, maybe it was a week after, but he got us an appointment almost right away compared to having to wait a month or 2 if you would have booked that appointment online. There's stuff like that happens all the time in Colombia. And so that can be frustrating as well as unfair. Also, it could work in your advantage too, but you're going to have to pay for it. Little things like that to where you could still bribe people. That is what it is. In Colombia, there is classism, not racism. I'm not saying racism doesn't ever happen or it hasn't happened there, but from my perspective and all the other travelers I've met, black, white, Asian, whatever, it's more of a classism system in Colombia, meaning that people judge you based on your appearance, your status, and the money that you make way more than they do about your race. So people don't really care there in Colombia. They might be interested, like for instance, I had an Asian friend the first time I went, and I met him over there in Colombia, and he would say he'd stop and get stares sometimes, but people don't really care. If anything, they're more curious because there's just not that many Asian people in Colombia, right? So it was different. And even black people, there's actually a black population in Colombia. It's Afro-Caribbean or Afro-Latino, and there's a good amount of black people there. So it's common to see people like that. But again, they don't care so much about your skin color. They care more about the status and the money part of that, right? So being a foreigner already, and this is subjective as well, right? Like obviously there's some xenophobia especially in Medellin, where, tourists have caused sort of a bad reputation in some parts to some people, not everybody. Now in my travels, maybe it's because I blend in, maybe it's because I have Latino features, so if I don't speak, nobody really knows I'm a foreigner there. So I never experienced anything like that. But for instance, once I start speaking and they realize, oh, this guy he speaks Spanish, but he has a very strong gringo accent, he's not from here, I would say they wouldn't really treat me differently, but they definitely would notice that, oh, you're a foreigner, so they're going to categorize you differently. And that could work in your advantage or to your disadvantage, depending on who you come in contact with, right? People care more about what strata you live in. So in Colombia, if you don't know, the way cities are broken down there is different stratas, and the lower stratas, 1, 2, and 3, those are kind of like low-income neighborhoods. Usually people don't make as much money there, and subsidies, electricity, rent, even grocery stores, they tend to be cheaper in those neighborhoods. And then strata 4, 5, and 6 are the higher ends. So if you live in those neighborhoods and you tell people you live in those neighborhoods, they sort of look at you with more respect, I guess. They treat you with a little more dignity. I'm not saying this always happens, but overall, and this didn't really happen to me so much, or it doesn't really happen to foreigners, because as a foreigner, you're going to stay in strata 4, 5, and 6, because all the popular neighborhoods in Medellin, the touristy, trendy areas, are all strata 4, 5, and 6. So that's Laureles, that's Bolin, that's Poblado, Envigado, and Sabaneta, right? Those neighborhoods are all in the higher stratas. Yeah, so depending on what strata you live in, like I said, it didn't really happen to me, but more so like my ex-girlfriend or other girlfriends that I had there, when they tell people where they live or something, you could just sort of see the shift in their face. For instance, Bello has really, I would say, negative reputation, especially in Medellin. Even if you have a friend from Bello and you guys are down in wherever, Envigado, Poblado, Laureles, it just comes up in conversation, oh, my friend lives in Bello. The locals will sort of make a note of that, and that's something that I did see. This one is kind of funny. When I first told people I was going to Colombia 4.5 years ago now, especially my family, they looked at me like I was crazy, looked at me sideways, right? Because Colombia has had this reputation of Pablo Escobar and Narcos. When you go down there, nobody really talks about him. It's not something that people just bring up in day-to-day life. The past is the past. So if you go down there with the expectation to just talk about Pablo Escobar and Narcos and all these stories you might have seen on Netflix or TV or even YouTube, it's a real part of their history, but nobody's going to bring it up to you, And the only time you're ever going to see or hear about that kind of stuff is if you're in the most touristy areas, if you're being sold to. If you're being sold a Pablo Escobar t-shirt, if you're being sold a Pablo Escobar tour, or something like that. But the average person, like once you start living there or once you start spending time there for a few weeks, few months, nobody talks about that. Unless you're looking for it over there, you're not really going to find it. And yeah, you could go up and talk to people about it. You could go ask people their stories, or you could do the whole Comuna 13 tour, and that has their own story and history. And you could even tour one of Pablo's old houses, I think, or you could go to the old jail, you could go to a cemetery, and that stuff is all there. And like I said, it is part of their history. But unless you're looking for it, nobody cares. Nobody talks about it. And the last thing that really surprised me about Colombia was just how many Venezuelan migrants are living in Colombia. I think they've estimated it that there's over 5 million Venezuelan migrants there. And that's a lot of people. The amount of people you see on the streets there selling you things or asking for money, it's really disheartening. It's sad to see. Everybody has their own story, but it's sort of in your face there a lot more. One example I could give in going to restaurants in Medellin, you could be sitting there like at a nice restaurant, inside or outside on the patio, wherever, and you'll have Venezuelans, or it doesn't always have to be Venezuelan, but the majority of the people I ran across were Venezuelan, and they'd come up asking for money, and they'd have their little kid with them, and it's hard to see. It's like that would never happen in a restaurant in the States, right? Like, yes, there's a bunch of homelessness in the States as well, but the second a homeless person comes in and starts asking for money in a restaurant, like, he's being asked to leave right away. And so that's something where, yeah, I saw it in both cases, right? So I saw people come into the restaurant and ask or try to sell you something. And sometimes, depending on the venue, the workers will ask them to leave, but not always. So sometimes they'll just let them talk to you and tell you their whole story. So it was crazy, and it's sort of sad to see. It was sad to see, and like I said, everybody has their own story, so I'm not judging, but it's just so much in your face there in Colombia, and you really notice a disparity in wealth, more so than a place like the States. And I've also dated a couple of girls from Venezuela, and I have nothing but nice things to say about people from Venezuela, but that is a real issue there in Colombia. Look, I just finished saying there's no racism in Colombia, but there's definitely stereotypes about Venezuelans in Colombia. For good, for bad, for everything, right? When I rented an Airbnb there, the last time that I was there, I told the guy, oh, by the way, I'm sort of dating this girl from Venezuela. Do you mind if she comes over? And he's like, yeah, but the way he told me was, yeah, I don't mind the Venezuelans like other people here in Colombia do. And so, I just thought to myself, well, for you to even say that, there must be like some sort of underlying issue, right? Because you shouldn't just say that. But there's stereotypes about people from Venezuela in Colombia, and so that's something if you're dating or have friends from Venezuela and you're in Colombia, something you have to be aware of. Yeah, guys, that pretty much wraps up all the surprising facts that I noticed when I was traveling or when I lived in Colombia. Am I right? Am I wrong? Is there anything else that really surprised you guys when you went, or certain things that you did not know about, like me, the first time that I went? So yeah, let me know what you guys think. And if you like this video, you'll probably like this video right here too. Thanks, guys. Thanks for watching.